Hello, third graders. Uh, Here's your next installment of Summer of the Woods. And we're starting with chapter 5. It's called The Creek. Derek pulled his hand over his face. Sunlight streamed through the window and the room glowed in the early morning light. He sat up. The rain had stopped. He looked around and realized he was in the family room. It took him a minute to remember how he'd arrived there during the storm. He looked down and saw the old newspaper clipping lying on the floor. He folded it back up and placed it in the box. The excitement of his discovery was still a bit cloudy from his short night of sleep, and he wasn't quite sure what to do next. He gathered the box and its contents and quietly walked back upstairs. He tried not to wake anyone, with the creaks in the floors, which could now be clearly heard in the quiet of the morning. He wandered down the hall to his bedroom where Sam still lay comatose. Derek leaned over the bed and stared into Sam's sleeping face. He was so close that their eyes were just inches apart. He stood there motionless for a few moments, his head frozen above the bed like a spider lurking above its prey. Sam didn't move a muscle. Derek gave a little tickle to Sam's arm through the sheets, but he still didn't move. Growing impatient, Derek decided to speed the process up a bit and gave his brother a hard poke in the ribs with his fingers. "Ah!" cried Sam as his whole body jumped and his eyes opened. He was surprised to see two eyeballs looking back at him. He tried to sit up, but instead he conked his forehead right into his older brother's nose. "Ow!" cried Derek. "Ow!" said Sam. "What are you doing?" "It stopped raining," answered Derek. "Let's go outside before Mom and Dad wake up." Sam just moaned, rubbed his head, and turned over in his bed. "What rain?" he said. "I'm tired." "There was a huge storm last night," replied Derek. "Not that you'd notice, since you slept through it as always." "Really?" "Really. Let's go. Get dressed. I want to get back to the creek, and you are not going to believe what I found." He held the box out in front of Sam and explained how he discovered it in the night and what was inside. Sam's jaw dropped open as Derek held up the Indian head scent. "No way!" Sam exclaimed. He took it from Derek and held it up carefully. "We have to show this to Dad." "Not yet," said Derek. "I want to try to figure this mystery out on our own first. If we find the stolen coins, we could be heroes." Derek pulled his desk chair over to the closet. He lifted the old box high over his head until it slid onto the top shelf, and he threw an old sweatshirt over top of it. "For safekeeping," he explained. "If it's been hidden for all these years, a little longer won't hurt anything, Sam. Come on, let's go to the creek." The two boys raced silently across the backyard and down the path to the creek. Both of their minds were too consumed with the thoughts of Derek's discovery to talk. Their sneakers quickly became wet from the grass as the storm had left everything soaked. Even though the sun was up, the air was still and quiet, except for the occasional cry of a red-tailed hawk that circled high above the trees. The boys had seen the creek a few times now since moving in, but they could tell that things were different even before they reached it. The sound of rushing water called out through the otherwise quiet forest. When they arrived at the water's edge, the boys slowly climbed up one of the fallen log bridges, putting one foot in front of the other, careful not to step on the wet, slippery mosses along the edges. They maneuvered to a spot that gave them a clear view of the water. The storm had turned the lazy flow of water into a surging stream that moved through the twists and turns of the creek bed with a newfound force. The water had risen at least 2 feet higher and wider onto the soft banks of the sand and dirt where the boys usually stood to throw stones. Piles of leaves and branches had been pushed onto the dirt over top of the normal walking trails. In fact, the large sticks that they had used as bridges over muddy spots on the ground had been completely washed away and were piled up with the other debris that was caught in the bends of the creek. Sam suddenly stopped thinking about Derek's discovery of the box and marveled at the creek. "What happened?" he asked. "There's a lot of rain last night," answered Derek. "I told you the storm was big, even though you didn't hear it." Yeah, you weren't kidding, said Sam. The boys stepped off the log and slowly found their way to the edge of the bank. Following the creek farther into the woods, Sam agreed to go toward the area where he'd found the coin, as long as they didn't go up near the boulder. The boys had a tough time seeing along the bottom of the creek since the water was so high and fast-moving from the storm. The stones looked blurry beneath the current, which was like the white water streaking from the jets of a hot tub. It seems like if there was one wheat penny in here, there might be others, reasoned Derek as they walked up and down the creek bank, peering into the water. Why would there be old pennies in the creek at all? Wondered Sam. Derek looked up at Sam. Don't you remember what Mr. Haskins said about that museum robbery? He said that the man they tried to arrest used to live in our house, Richard Davis. You believe him? Asked Sam. Because I think he's crazy. Spooks me out with all that talk of his brother falling into a hole and dying. Well, I don't know about his brother, but the museum robbery was real. It was in the newspaper article in the box. Plus, the notebook had R. Davis written in the cover, the map of the passageways, and it had a real Indian head scent. It all points to one thing. What? Said Sam. What does it point to? Do I have to spell it out for you, Sam? The treasure. It's out there. Somewhere by the boulder in that Virginia Mining Company sign. It has to be. And I'm going to find it. Said Sam. How do you know it's by the boulder? Maybe he really did steal them, but then threw them here in the creek. He wouldn't throw a valuable coin collection in the creek, Sam. That wouldn't make any sense. Would you throw money in a creek? I've thrown pennies in the fountain at the mall, answered Sam. Maybe the police were hot on his trail. Just forget it, sighed Derek in frustration. This is a stupid conversation and a waste of time. There's nothing here, and we'd never find anything with all this fast-moving water. Let's head home. Wait a minute, Derek, said Sam. I just want to look more downstream from where I found the penny. Sam walked slowly along the edge of the creek bed slope, eyes fixed down in the water. He came to a spot where the trees overhead parted in the sky, allowing the sunlight to stream down into the water. Suddenly, Sam spied something glimmering in the light. He got down on his knees and bent lower to see what it was. Derek, look, what do you see that? Do you see that? Where? Right there, next to that square-shaped rock sticking out of the water. See those spots sparkling in the sunlight? Are those coins? I don't know. They're kind of small. It's hard to tell, answered Derek. Let me see if I can move one with a stick so we can tell if it's a coin, said Sam. He picked out a long stick from the brush and leaned further over the bank, stretching his arm as far as he could toward the sparkle. The edge of the stick pushed into the wet dirt around the shiny object and then lightly touched it. Look at that, yelled Sam. Something moved and it was round. I'm telling you, they're coins, just like I found before. I have to get them. Here, hold my legs. This branch isn't long enough and I need to reach down there. Derek sat on the ground behind him and held onto his brother's dangling feet. Sam, be careful. You're not going to be able to reach them. It's too far down. Let's go around to the other side. No, this is better, Sam yelled as he looked into the water. Yep, they're coins. I can see them. Sweet. There's a few. 1, 2, 3. As Sam said 3, the stick that he was balancing on split in two with a loud snap. He lost his balance and went sliding forward down the edge of the bank. His fingers scratched at the dirt as he slid, but there was nothing to hold on to. Sam's sudden burst forward sent Derek falling backward and left him holding only an empty sneaker. He watched his brother slide head first out of his view and over the edge of the creek bank. Sam! Derek pushed himself off the ground and ran to the edge of the creek. He looked down and saw Sam's body lying in the water on a rock as the current streamed by. His head was above water, but it was turned the other way, and Derek couldn't see his face to tell if he was okay. Sam? He called out again, but there was no answer. Derek looked for a way to get down to him without falling too. He began to panic. He looked back at Sam, but his brother still hadn't moved. He looked up the bank a few yards and saw a small sapling tree growing right up the side of the creek bank. It leaned out over the water in a curve, like a backwards letter C. Derek didn't think any longer. He just wrapped his arm around the thin tree limb and dangled himself out over the water. He counted to 3 and let go. Those 5 feet he fell into the creek seemed like 20 as he splashed down into the water. His feet slipped on the rounded rocks and the water came up to his waist. He ran, slipped, and paddled his way towards Sam. Derek reached out and pulled at Sam's wet shirt. He lifted him up and slowly turned his head over. Sam's eyes were closed, and his face was splattered with mud. Derek couldn't tell if he was breathing. His mind raced with thoughts of what to do. "Help!" Derek screamed out. "Somebody help!" He knew that you were supposed to do CPR or mouth-to-mouth something, but he wasn't sure exactly how it worked. His teachers had said they were going to learn about it next year in gym class, but he needed to know it now. Derek leaned over and opened Sam's mouth with his fingers. He pushed his lips over his brother's mouth and started to blow. He felt Sam's face move, and then it smiled. Derek looked up and saw a mischievous glimmer in his eyes, and then Sam started to laugh. "Gotcha, Derek," yelled Sam as he sat up in the water. "Sam, are you crazy? I thought you were dead," screamed Derek. "You love me. You really love me," giggled Sam, and he splashed Derek with his hand in the water. "I'm going to kill you," yelled Derek, and he pushed his brother under the water. Sam bounced back up. The water actually feels pretty good. And look. He brought his hand out from under the water and revealed several coins. "I grabbed them when I fell down the bank. I told you they were coins." Derek rolled his eyes. "You're unbelievable." He waded up to the spot in the creek where the coins had been, pushing his brother down into the water again with a splash as he went. The boys climbed back to dry land and spread the coins out on a smooth spot in the dirt. There were 5 coins in all. Another wheat penny, an unusual-looking nickel with a buffalo on the back from 1932, and 3 silver coins from the 1920s that were the size of dimes but had a lady's head on the front with wings coming out of the sides. "No Indian head sense," moaned Derek, disappointed. These coins were still pretty cool. It was even more fun than opening packs of baseball cards. "These are pretty worn from being in the water, but I bet they're still worth something." "They keep getting weirder and weirder," marveled Sam, holding up the one with the wings on it. "I wonder what these others are called. We'll have to look online like Dad did before. He's going to be surprised." "No, I still don't want to tell him about all of this yet," decided Derek. "I want to figure out where that map leads. I think there's a bigger treasure out there." These are just smaller clues. This wouldn't have been enough to steal from a museum. Treasure's got to be near that boulder, but I'm afraid that Dad will say it's too dangerous. "But it is too dangerous," argued Sam. "Let's see. There's a cliff, those crazy kids, oh, and a bear. Do you want to get attacked by a bear? I'm telling Dad." Derek grabbed Sam's arm and looked him in the eye. "Don't tell Dad," he warned slowly. "It's not dangerous. You saw those other kids playing down there. How bad could it be? Besides, it's a treasure, Sam. How often do kids our age get to hunt for a real-life treasure?" Sam looked at the coins on the ground and thought about the treasure. "Do you really think these coins could be clues to a treasure?" "Definitely," Derek answered confidently. "Look at all these coins. It has to be connected. You have to trust me, Sam." "Okay," said Sam slowly, still a little uncertain. "But I'm coming with you." Chapter 6. The 4th of July. July hit Virginia that summer like a furnace. Temperature rose higher and higher, eclipsing 100 degrees. The ancient air conditioning system in the boys' house groaned from constant use, and the grass around the yard was slowly turning a crispy brown. It was too hot to play outside, so Sam and Derek spent hours plotting out their search for the missing treasure. Derek doubted that anyone else knew about the coins, since there surely couldn't be another map like the one he'd found in the box. But who knows? Those other kids could stumble upon it by accident any day. and then it would be gone. He was determined to get there first, but they hadn't been able to find a good time to sneak out. The next day was the 4th of July, and despite their protests to Mom and Dad that they had much more important things to do, the boys dragged themselves into the minivan. Mom assured them that there would be lots of fun things to do when they reached the park for a holiday cookout and fireworks with their aunt and uncle and cousins. "But Mom, we really don't have time for this today," argued Derek. "Yeah, we've got a lot to do," added Sam. "Very important things." "What could you have to do that's more important than our nation's birthday?" asked Mom. How would you like it if we skipped your birthday? Did you know that a lot of important historical events happened right here in Virginia? I'm sure you'll learn about many of them in school this year." "Is this where Lady Liberty lived?" giggled Derek. "No, but there was a famous speech about liberty delivered by someone named Patrick Henry right here in Richmond," answered Mom. "Well, did he say liberty and justice for all?" asked Sam. "No, that was Superman," said Derek. Mom laughed. "No, wise guys. Patrick Henry said, 'Give me liberty or give me death.'" "Whoa, that's serious," said Derek. "He must have really loved her." Sam gave Derek a strange look. "What?" "You know, Lady Liberty. That Henry Ford guy must have really loved her if he would rather die than live without her," explained Derek. "Oh, brother," moaned Sam. "Patrick Henry," corrected Mom. "And liberty is not a she, it's a thing. It means freedom, which is why we think about it on the 4th of July when America declared its independence or freedom from England. Patrick Henry argued that Virginia should join the Revolution, and they did." "Was it a New Year's revolution?" asked Derek. "Those are really hard to keep." Sam looked at his brother again. "Seriously, Derek?" Derek just laughed. "Here we are," shouted Dad as they turned into the state park and pulled up next to their uncle's big pickup truck. Everyone piled out and brought all their food and supplies over to picnic tables under a pavilion for a tasty meal of burgers, hot dogs, and corn on the cob. A little while after the meal, everyone swam out to the middle of the nearby pond and enjoyed the cool water. Sam and Derek's aunt and uncle had a pair of retrievers that came along to cool off from the heat, and the two dogs ran and jumped in the water like they were born to swim. The boys threw a tennis ball to each other in the shallow areas, and the dogs jumped back and forth trying to grab every throw out of the air. An old wooden platform floated off the far shore of the pond, and the kids jumped in and out of the water, judging each other's best cannonball splash. Uncle Drew said that the water was nearly 20 feet deep. When no one was looking, Derek gathered up his courage and did his very best to dive into the water. First he was scared, but as he got deeper down, he loved how the water grew ice cold, where the sun did not reach. It felt like he'd escaped from the heat into some unknown glacial waters. Derek stayed down as long as he could in the cold water. When it felt as if his lungs would burst, he kicked and pulled with all his strength back up to the surface. When his head broke through, he sucked in the warm air and smiled at the fun. After everyone had their fill of swimming, the families all dried off and walked over to the other side of the park, where the locals gathered for the fireworks celebration. Camp chairs were unfolded and set up in a row. A big blanket was spread out in the grass for the younger cousins to sit on. Derek stared up and watched the last pieces of sunlight slip from the western horizon as the sky faded into darkness. "Are there going to be screamers?" Sam asked his mom. "Well, your little cousins might get scared at the loud noise, but I don't know if they'll scream," she answered. "No, not screaming, Mom. Screamers. You know, the fireworks that make a squealing sound." "We call those screamers, Mom," said Derek. "There's also bangers, poppers, boomers, crackers, sizzlers, plus a few more I forget. You'll see." "Believe it or not, boys, I've been to plenty of fireworks, more than you, in fact." Before the boys could answer, everyone was startled by an enormous boom that shook the ground. "That was a boomer, Mom," shouted Sam. "I felt that one inside my chest." "Ah, I see what you're talking about," laughed Mom. And for what seemed like hours, they all stared wide-eyed at as the heavens exploded in color and sound. On the ride back home, the boys rested their heads in the darkness as their van slowly crept along in the lines of traffic. It seemed as if the entire town was filing out along the same small country road back to their homes. Derek squinted his eyes till they were nearly shut and made the tailgates of the other cars look blurry like fire bursts. "I was talking with your Uncle Drew at dinner," Dad called from the front seat. "He said that we could borrow his big tent if we wanted to try to camp out in the woods behind our house next week, once this heat breaks." "Awesome!" shouted Sam, suddenly alert at the news. "That would be so cool. I love camping." "How do you know if you love camping?" sneered Derek. "How many times have you done it? Just that one time when you were 2. You practically slept through the whole thing." "Yes, but I loved it," shouted Sam. "Can we go tomorrow, Dad?" "No, it's too hot this week. But the weekend should be cooler," Dad replied. "I think there's an empty field on the other side of the creek that Mr. Haskins told me about. He said he's used it as a campsite before and no one minded." "But, honey, isn't that where the—" started Mom, and then she whispered something that the boys couldn't hear from the back seat. "What?" said Sam. "Isn't that where the what?" Mr. Haskins also said that a few years ago he saw a couple of bear cubs running down the hill when he and the landowner were clearing a trail, answered Dad. "That was a while ago." "Bears?" asked Sam. "Forget it. I don't like bears. No way." "I thought it was snakes you were afraid of," teased Derek. "Bears too," said Sam. "Snakes and bears, they're both bad, very bad." "You're afraid of everything, Sam." "Be quiet, Derek. You're afraid of the wind and storms." "All right," said Dad. "Don't worry. They won't bother us if we all keep our food put away and make plenty of noise." He glanced in the mirror back at the boys and chuckled. "I've never seen you two have a problem making noise." "I think we'll be fine." Mom smiled and the boys laughed uneasily. Derek nudged Sam across the seat and leaned over to whisper in his ear, "That's over toward the boulder. Maybe we can get over there during the camping trip." "No way," said Sam. "I changed my mind. I'm not getting trapped in a mine. I don't want to be like Mr. Haskins' brother and fall in a hole. I might get trapped and eaten by a bear." "We'll see," answered Derek. And they settled back into their seats and closed their eyes. And soon they had both drifted off to sleep with visions of campfires exploding in the sky and brightly colored bears falling into holes. And that is the end of chapter 6. We'll start the next time with chapter 7, The Night. And I will also, the next time, have some poems picked out to read to you at the end of my reading time. So, third graders, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're all healthy and doing your schoolwork and enjoying the days that we do have nice weather. So, hopefully things will get back to normal soon. So, anyway, guys, all take care. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.